A geopolitical tsunami is coming. Ukraine was the beginning. In 2023, an entire historical period will leave in a deafening way. Historical changes imminent in this year, 2023, the entire period that began in 1991 when the fall of the USSR ends. In 2023 begins with NATO in a state of alarm as Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu has announced that the Russian Navy frigate Admiral Gorshkov, equipped with formidable supersonic Zircon missiles, has begun a long voyage spanning the Atlantic and Indian Oceans and, of course, the Mediterranean Sea as well. This wealth has nothing to do with Ukraine, according to the well-known geopolitical analyst Pepe Escobar. It's a sign of what will happen next when they are going to fry a lot bigger fish than a handful of psychopaths in Kiev, he notes characteristically. Moscow has made it painfully clear that there is no reason to trust the declining no-deal superpower. Everyone is now waiting for General Armageddon's Surovikin big winter offensive to begin, which includes total demilitarization and de-electrification of Ukraine, with complete dismantling of Zelensky's army and a total lowest possible cost to the Russian armed forces in Donbass, or maybe not. Historical upheaval, another, quote, big fried fish, end quote, on the hot plate, in late 2022 was the Minsk Agreement of 2014. The cook was none other than former Chancellor Merkel trying to buy time for Ukraine, and the fish was Russia. Merkel's confession could be used as a specific reason and evidence for a court to judge Western politicians responsible for provoking the Russian-Ukrainian proxy war. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said, followed by the Vice President of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, he said, "Last warning to all nations, there can be no understanding with the Anglo-Saxon world, for they are a thief, a rogue, who can do anything. From now on, we will do without them until a new generation of sane people comes to power political. There is no one in the West with whom we could do better, anything for any reason." This is what the Russian politician noted. China in the frame and the fear of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, that is. A few days later, he delivered exactly the same message to Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing. The strategic partnership with China is perfectly timed. On the war front, the new aggressive crescendo of General Armageddon is sure to lead in the coming months to an indisputable fact on the ground: a dysfunctional black hole or edge of Ukraine in the west and Novorossiya, that is SS Russian territories, in the east. Even if the IMF is now reluctant to pour additional funds into the black hole, Kiev's budget for 2023 has an unrealistic deficit of $36 billion. Half of the budget is related to military purposes. The actual deficit in 2022 is about $5 billion every single month and will inevitably grow. Timofey Milovanov, professor of the Kiev School of Economics, stresses the IMF is concerned about Ukraine's debt sustainability. He adds, even if the IMF is worried, imagine what private investors are thinking. There will be no investment in Ukraine. Multinational vultures will grab the land for nothing and whatever productive assets may be left. The big fish is NATO. Arguably the biggest fish to fry in 2023 is the NATO myth. Every serious military analyst, including a few Americans, knows that the Russian army and its military-industrial complex represent a superior system to what existed at the end of the USSR and far superior to that of the US and the rest of NATO today. In 2008, Russia began a massive rebuilding of its missile forces and a 14-year plan to modernize its ground forces. Zircon is only a small part of the big picture. The myth of the US power. The CIA left Afghanistan in a humiliating retreat only to settle in Ukraine and continue playing the same old broken records, Escobar points out. The example of New York, The CIA is behind the ongoing sabotage of Russian infrastructure in conjunction with MI6 British and others. Sooner or later, any damage will be repaired. Few people, including CIA operatives, may know that New York City, for example, can be destroyed in a single move, blowing up the George Washington Bridge. The city cannot supply food and most of its needs without that bridge. New York's electricity grid can also be easily destroyed. NATO and military strikes in Europe. The real war has not even started yet, but maybe soon. Apart from Ukraine and Poland, there is no NATO power worth mentioning. Germany has a decent ammo strength for 2 days only. Turkey will not send a single soldier to fight the Russians in Ukraine. Of the 80,000 US troops stationed in Europe, only 10% are equipped with weapons. Recently added 20,000, no big deal. If the Americans were to activate their troops in Europe, something unlikely, they would have nowhere to move supplies or reinforcements. All airports and ports would be destroyed by Russian hypersonic missiles within minutes in continental Europe as well as the UK. In addition, all fuel centers such as Rotterdam for oil and natural gas will be destroyed, as well as all military installations including the top US bases in Europe. Grafenwohr, Hohenfels, Ramstein, Baumholder, Wilsek, Spandalem, Wiesenbad in Germany for Army and Air Force, Aviano Air Base in Italy, Lajes Air Base in Azores, Portugal, Rota Naval Station in Spain, Incirlik Air Base in Turkey, the Royal Air Force Base in Lakenheath in Middlehall in the United Kingdom. All fighter planes and bombers would be destroyed after landing or during landing. There would be no place to land but the highway. A failure is the Patriots. Patriot missiles are worthless, as the whole world saw in Saudi Arabia when they tried to shoot down Houthi missiles coming from Yemen. Here, Israel's Iron Dome cannot even hit all the primitive rockets coming from Gaza. An even bigger fish is the US hiding behind proxies like Ukraine. US forces have only been tested with a depleted Iraq in 2003 and counting a humiliation from the Taliban. The whole of NATO was completely humiliated by the Taliban, as Kobar emphasizes. End of season. In 2022 marked the end of an era, the final breaking point of the rules-based international order created after the fall of the USSR. The world created in 1991 is finally dissolving. NATO's war against Russia in Ukraine is just one piece in the puzzle of the new great game. For the global south, what really matters is now Eurasia and beyond, coordinates its integration process from BRI to BRICS expansion and from CSO to INCTS and from OPEC Plus to Partnership for Greater Eurasia. We're returning to what the world looked like in 1914 or before 1939, only in a limited sense. There are a number of states struggling to expand their influence, but all are betting on multipolarity or peaceful modernization, as coined by Xi Jinping of China, rather than the US doctrine of forever wars with China, Russia, India, Iran, Indonesia, and others in the spotlight. This is by Banking News. I've translated for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box.